The power of stillness in a loud world. We live in a time where the volume of life is constantly turned up. The world is loud. From the moment we open our eyes, we're surrounded by noise, notifications, opinions, outrage, entertainment, arguments, endless updates. Social media thrives on reaction. News cycles are driven by fear and conflict. Conversations often turn into competitions of who can speak the loudest, who can prove their point quickest, who can win the moment. And in all this noise, there's one thing that's slowly being forgotten, even overlooked: stillness. The quiet, the pause, the power of staying calm, grounded, and intentional. It's not flashy. It doesn't trend. But it might be one of the most important strengths a person can develop today. Stillness isn't just the absence of movement. It's the presence of peace. It's the deliberate choice to hold steady when everything around you is spinning. It's resisting the pull to react just because something upset you or triggered you or challenged you. Stillness is strength because it allows you to stay in control, not just a situation, but of yourself. It's easy to match someone's anger. It's easy to raise your voice when someone raises theirs. But what takes real strength, what takes real wisdom, is the ability to remain calm when everything inside you wants to explode. That's not weakness. That's mastery. That's leadership. Think about the last time you reacted out of emotion. Maybe someone said something that pushed your buttons. Maybe life hit you with disappointment, betrayal, or disrespect. You felt that fire rise up inside, your heart racing, your breath shortening, your voice sharpening. That's emotion in full control. And sure, in the moment, it feels right to respond with fire. You want to lash out, defend yourself, speak up fast so no one gets the wrong idea. But after that moment passes, when the heat cools down, most of us are left with regret. Regret for what we said. Regret for how we said it. Regret for letting the storm on the outside shake the calm on the inside. Because emotions are fast, but wisdom is slow. Emotions are loud, but wisdom is quiet. Emotions want to win right now. Wisdom wants peace that lasts. And this is where stillness becomes so powerful. Stillness creates space. It gives you just enough room between the trigger and the reaction to make a conscious choice. It gives you the ability to respond instead of react. And in that small space, between feeling and action, is where your power lives. That's where wisdom steps in. That's where maturity shows up. Because anyone can speak quickly, but not everyone can speak wisely. Anyone can argue, but not everyone can understand. Stillness allows you to pause, to think, to breathe, and most importantly, to lead yourself before trying to lead others. This doesn't mean you don't feel things deeply. It doesn't mean you ignore your emotions. It means you don't let your emotions make decisions for you. It means you learn to sit with your feelings instead of acting on them. Because feelings are valid, but they're not always accurate. And if we make choices in the height of emotion, we risk creating consequences that outlast the moment. Words said in anger can fracture a relationship. Decisions made in fear can derail your future. Actions taken in pride can damage your integrity. But stillness? Stillness saves you from all that. It slows you down just enough to hear your own wisdom, your deeper truth, the one that isn't moved by mood or moment. There's a kind of quiet power that comes with being grounded. When everyone else is scrambling to be heard, when tempers are flaring and drama is unfolding, the one who stays calm stands out. People notice. They feel your presence. They may not always say it, but they respect it, because calm isn't common. And in a world addicted to noise, peace is magnetic. It pulls people in. It invites trust. And it builds influence without you ever needing to raise your voice. That's why stillness isn't about staying silent out of fear. It's about standing firm in wisdom. It's about knowing that you don't have to shout to be strong. You don't have to react to be respected. The world will try to provoke you. People will test you. Situations will challenge your peace. But every time you choose stillness over chaos, every time you choose to observe before speaking, to reflect before acting, to stay grounded instead of getting swept away, you are choosing power. The kind of power that lasts. The kind of power that doesn't just win the moment, but builds a life. Because you're not out here trying to impress the storm. You're preparing to outlast it. So don't let the noise out there shake the clarity in here. Let your silence be intentional. Let your pause be your protection. Let your calm be your confidence. And when they ask how you stayed so composed, how you didn't lose your temper, how you stayed grounded when the pressure was high, just smile and say this. Because I wasn't trying to win the argument. I was focused on winning my peace. I wasn't reacting to the storm. I was anchoring myself to outlast it. In that moment, you won't just feel strong. You'll be strong, quietly, powerfully, unshakably, mastering the pause, choosing response over reaction. There's a powerful difference between reacting and responding, one that can reshape your relationships, redefine your peace, and realign your entire approach to life. Yet, it's one of the most overlooked distinctions in how we handle our emotions. Most people go through life reacting. Something happens, a betrayal, a frustration, a disappointment. And without thinking, without reflecting, without even pausing to breathe, they lash out. They raise their voice, slam a door, send the angry text, quit the job, and the relationship walk away in rage. It's fast. It's raw. It feels justified in the moment. But once the dust settles, once the emotional storm quiets, there's often a heavy cost. Damage done. Words you can't take back. Opportunities lost. Peace shattered. That's the price of reaction. Reaction is emotion on autopilot. It's giving your power away to the moment. And when you react, you become a passenger in your own life, letting your feelings steer the wheel without any direction. But response, that's a different level of living. A response is intentional. A response is mature. It's what happens when you choose to pause, to reflect, and to make decisions not just based on how you feel in a moment, but based on who you want to be in the long run. It's choosing to act in alignment with your values, your integrity, and your vision for yourself. Even when your emotions are screaming for revenge, validation, or control, that pause between stimulus and action, that tiny, powerful space, that's where transformation happens. That's where wisdom has room to breathe. Because in that pause, you're not just feeling, you're thinking. You're observing. You're asking yourself questions that emotion never bothers to ask. What is this really about? Is this battle even worth fighting? Will this matter tomorrow? Next week? 5 years from now? What's the outcome I want? And is this action moving me closer or further from it? Those are the questions that separate the impulsive from the intentional, the reactive from the grounded, the emotionally driven from the emotionally intelligent. We often glorify passion and quick comebacks, but we forget that the strongest people don't always speak first. They speak last. They watch. They wait. They allow emotion to rise and then fall like a wave. They let the fire burn without letting it consume their judgment. And then, when the moment is right, they respond, not to win the argument, but to win the outcome. That's wisdom. That's leadership. That's maturity. Because you see, anyone can react, but not everyone can respond. Reaction is easy. It takes nothing but a spark. But a wise response? That takes character. It takes self-awareness. It takes the willingness to stand in the tension of your own emotions and not let them own you. Think about how much better our relationships, our decisions, our lives would be if we all learned to respond more and react less. If instead of escalating conflict, we sought understanding. If instead of firing back, we leaned in with empathy. If instead of making everything about proving our point, we started focusing on preserving our peace. A reaction might win a moment, but a response wins the war. A reaction might feel good now, but a response creates long-term peace and clarity. And when you live in that kind of alignment, you stop being a victim of your emotions and start becoming a master of them. But make no mistake, this isn't about becoming emotionless. Emotions are part of the human experience. They're real. They're valid. They tell us something about what matters to us. But they're not always wise. They're not always right. And they should never be handed the steering wheel. Wisdom allows you to feel your emotions fully, but not be ruled by them. Wisdom says, I hear you, but I don't have to obey you. And in that strength, you give yourself the gift of power, not the loud, aggressive kind of power that demands to be seen, but the quiet, grounded kind that makes decisions with purpose and clarity. When you start living this way, people notice. Your energy shifts. Your presence deepens. You become someone others feel safe around, not because you don't feel, but because you don't flinch. You become dependable in chaos, calm in crisis, steady in the storm. And that kind of presence, that's rare. That's powerful. That's the mark of someone who has mastered the pause. Someone who no longer lets life pull them in every direction, but instead chooses their direction with intention. That's someone who doesn't just react to life. They respond to it with purpose. So the next time emotion rushes in like a wave, and you feel that surge, to act fast, to say something sharp, to make a bold move, pause, breathe, step back, let the wave pass, and then ask yourself, is this reaction serving me, or is there a wiser response waiting to rise? Because in that question, you take your power back. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to respond to every insult, every trigger, every push. You get to choose your peace over your pride. And in that choice, you don't just change the outcome, you change your life. Absolutely. Here's part 3 in long-form, powerful, paragraph-only style. This section focuses on the power of calm and the strength found in stillness, continuing the theme of focusing on what truly matters in life. Strength in stillness. In a world that constantly glorifies loudness, loud opinions, loud arguments, loud personalities, we've been conditioned to believe that volume equals strength, that to be heard is to be respected, and to be still is to be silent. But true power, the kind that changes lives and commands attention without demanding it, doesn't shout. It doesn't beg to be seen. True power whispers and still gets heard. There's an unmatched strength in calm, a quiet force that doesn't need to dominate the room because it knows exactly who it is. Calm isn't weakness. It's control. It's mastery. It's choosing poise over panic, stillness over screaming, composure over chaos. And in today's reactive, restless world, that kind of calm, that's rare and it's transformational. When storms rage around you, disrespect from others, tension in your relationships, uncertainty in your path, your first instinct might be to match the chaos with more chaos, to raise your voice, to clap back, to show that you're not the one to be messed with. But what if I told you that the most effective way to stand strong isn't to get louder, but to get clearer, to ground yourself so deeply in who you are that nothing external can shake what's internal? Calm is not the absence of emotion. It's not passivity. It's not indifference. Calm is a conscious decision to not let the storm outside create a storm inside. It's the inner knowing that you are bigger than the moment, that you don't have to prove your power. You just have to live it. You see, anyone can react when tensions rise. Anyone can yell when they're provoked. But not everyone can stay grounded. Not everyone can sit in the middle of pressure and still think clearly. That's what separates the strong from the shaken. Because calm people don't collapse under pressure, they anchor in it. They become the still point in a spinning world. And that kind of stillness, it's magnetic. It's the kind of presence that others feel when you walk into a room, even if you never say a word. Because your calm is your energy. It speaks louder than noise ever could. You're not trying to win arguments. You're walking in alignment. You're not desperate to be understood. You're confident in your understanding. The world tells us we need to make noise to be respected. But the truth is, some of the most respected people speak the least and listen the most. They don't fight to be right. They speak to bring light. They don't react with spotlight. They respond for impact. Their calm doesn't mean they're not passionate. It means they're powerful enough to choose when, where, and how to engage. Because real strength isn't about being triggered by everything. It's about not being moved by every little thing. It's about having the emotional discipline to say, this doesn't deserve my energy. My peace is worth more than this moment. In personal life, in leadership, in love, calm creates clarity. When you're calm, you see people for who they are, not just how they act. You listen deeper. You lead better. You choose more wisely. When others are caught up in reaction, your calm becomes your compass. It allows you to step back and assess, not just absorb. It allows you to see the bigger picture. Because calmness gives you perspective. And perspective, that's everything. It turns potential disasters into moments of direction. It turns conflict into growth. It turns pain into purpose. But here's the secret most people miss. Calm isn't natural. It's trained. It's a habit. It's a choice you make over and over again until it becomes who you are. Every time you pause instead of react, you build that muscle. Every time you breathe through frustration instead of unleashing it, You build that habit, and eventually, your calm won't just be a response. It'll become your identity. The more grounded you are, the less the world can shake you, the less noise can distract you, the less opinions can define you, because your calm becomes your shield, your strength, your superpower. And when people ask, why are you so calm when everything is falling apart? You can answer them with the quiet confidence of someone who understands something deeper. Because I'm not here to impress the storm. I'm here to outlast it. That's the mindset that leads. That's the energy that heals. That's the presence that inspires. The storm may come for everyone, but only those who are calm within will still be standing when it passes. So don't chase chaos. Don't be pulled into every drama, every debate, every distraction. Protect your calm like your life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. In this noisy world, be the presence that feels like peace. Be the voice that doesn't have to shout. Be the energy that doesn't rush. Because when you walk in calm, you carry something rare, and people feel it. They trust it. They follow it. And most importantly, you live in it. And that is the kind of life that lasts. Mastering the moment that shapes your life. There's a moment, small, quiet, but incredibly powerful, that live between what happens to you and how you respond. That moment, though often overlooked, is the most important decision space you will ever face. Because in that split second, you're not just reacting to the world. You're choosing who you are. You're defining your character, protecting your peace, and shaping the trajectory of your life. But most people miss that moment. They jump straight from trigger to action. They feel hurt and strike back. They feel disrespected and retaliate. They let their emotion take the wheel, and in doing so, they give away their power. But here's the truth that wisdom teaches. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to react just because you're provoked. Sometimes the strongest move is no move at all. Sometimes silence is your answer, and peace is your victory. Reactions are fast, impulsive, and often fueled by unprocessed pain. They feel good for a second, but they leave damage in their wake. A harsh word said in anger, a decision made in fear, a relationship broken because pride spoke first. All of these are the result of choosing reaction over response. And once those words are out, once that door is slammed, it's hard to undo what's been done. Emotion is powerful, no doubt. But wisdom is power under control. It's the discipline to pause, to breathe, to observe before you act. That pause isn't weakness. That space between stimulus and response, that's where your leadership lives. That's where your self-respect lives. That's where maturity shows up and reminds you, you don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't have to be quick to be smart. You don't have to be emotional to be authentic. Consider how many moments in your life were changed not by what happened to you, but by how you chose to respond. Think about the fights that escalated because no one took a step back. Think about the bridges burned over words that didn't need to be said. Think about the times your reaction added fuel to a fire that could have been put out with just a little patience. Now think about the times you chose differently, the times you paused, the times you stayed quiet, not because you didn't have something to say, but because you knew that peace was more valuable than proving a point. That's the power of response. It doesn't just avoid damage. It builds trust. It earns respect. It preserves relationships. It keeps you aligned with your higher self. There's a deep wisdom in learning how to sit with a feeling without acting on it, to feel the anger rise, but not let it rule, to feel the pain, but not become it, to feel the urge to clap back, but choose clarity instead. That's what emotionally mature people do. They don't deny their emotions, but they don't let their emotions define them either. They give themselves permission to feel, but not permission to sabotage their peace. And that makes all the difference. Because when you operate from wisdom instead of impulse, you move with intention. You choose your words. You own your tone. You're not reactive. You're reflective. And in a world that moves too fast, that kind of presence is rare and powerful. Imagine how different your days would be if you approached every challenge with a responsive mindset. Instead of matching people's energy, you'd protect your own. Instead of getting pulled into every drama, you'd choose discernment. You'd recognize that every reaction you give is a seed you're planting, one that either grows into regret or into wisdom. Responding with calm with intention, with integrity. That's not about being passive. That's about being purposeful. It's about rising above the noise and saying, I will not let temporary emotions create permanent damage. Because life will test you. People will push your buttons. Situations will trigger your worst instincts. But the people who grow, the people who lead, the people who rise above, they don't get pulled into every fire. They become the ones who put them out. When you live in reaction, you are constantly at the mercy of others. Your peace is owned by whoever knows how to upset you. Your joy is one comment away from destruction. But when you learn to respond, you reclaim your power. You no longer live like a leaf in the wind, drifting from one emotion to the next. You become the tree, grounded, rooted, immovable. Your strength isn't in how loud you can be when challenged. It's in how steady you stay when everything around you is spinning. And people notice. They may not say it, but they feel it. They feel your energy shift the room. They feel your wisdom in the way you carry yourself. And over time, your response becomes your reputation. Calm, grounded, focused, powerful. So the next time life presses your buttons, remember this. You don't have to react. You get to choose. And in that choice is your strength, your freedom, and your future. Make the space. Take the breath. Own the moment. Because when you live from response, you live from purpose. And purpose always outlasts emotion. The strength to listen, finding wisdom in the silence. In a world obsessed with being heard, there's a rare and quiet strength in choosing to listen. Everyone is trying to speak louder, post more, argue better, and prove their point faster. But wisdom doesn't live in the noise. It lives in the stillness. It thrives in the space between someone's words and your response. It listens not just to hear, but to understand. It's easy to talk. It's easy to interrupt, debate, and push your narrative. But it takes real strength, real humility, and real maturity to sit with someone's words and truly receive them. That's because listening isn't just about your ears. It's about your presence. It's about putting your ego aside long enough to recognize that understanding someone doesn't always mean agreeing with them, but it does mean honoring their humanity. The problem is, most people listen to reply, not to understand. They're not absorbing. They're preparing their next point. They're planning their defense. And in that rush to be right, they miss the heart of the conversation. They miss the pain behind someone's anger, the fear beneath someone's frustration, the vulnerability beneath someone's silence. You see, communication isn't just about words. It's about connection. And connection can't grow where ego stands in the way. But wisdom removes that barrier. It leans in not to win the argument, but to win the relationship, not to be right, but to bring peace. It understands that most people don't want perfection. They just want presence. They want to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be heard without being fixed or judged or shut down. And sometimes, the most healing thing you can offer someone isn't advice. It's attention. When you listen with wisdom, you listen with your whole self. Your eyes are present. Your mind is quiet. Your heart is open. You're not listening for weakness. You're listening for truth. You're not looking for a flaw. You're looking for clarity. Because wisdom knows that you don't need to defend yourself against everything that challenges you. Some things are meant to grow you. Some conversations are meant to stretch you. And sometimes, what someone else is saying is less about you and more about their own internal war. But if you listen only through your pain, through your past, or through your pride, you'll misinterpret everything. You'll hear criticism where there was only concern. You'll hear judgment where there was actually just truth. And you'll miss the lesson that could have changed you. There's a reason the wisest people often speak the least. It's because they're too busy observing. They understand that silence isn't empty. It's full of insight. They're listening to what's being said and also to what's not. They're paying attention to the emotion behind the words, the patterns in the story, the inconsistencies in the narrative. And that kind of listening gives them an edge. It gives them clarity, not just over others, but over themselves. It keeps them from jumping to conclusions, from overreacting, from assuming things that aren't true. Because when you listen deeply, you don't just learn about others, you learn about yourself. You learn how your mind works, how your triggers respond, how your heart processes. And that awareness, that's power. Quiet, Power. Lasting power. The kind of power that builds legacies, not just wins arguments. Listening with wisdom doesn't mean you agree with everything you hear. It doesn't mean you stay silent when you should speak. It simply means you choose your words carefully. You make sure they're rooted in clarity, not ego. In understanding, not assumption. You listen long enough to see the bigger picture before you speak into it. Because words carry weight. And once they're spoken, they can't be taken back. So wise people speak less, but say more. They speak with intent, not impulse. And because they've listened first, their words carry more truth, more healing, more influence. The world listens to them not because they demand attention, but because their presence commands it. Think about your own life. How many conflicts could have been avoided if someone had simply listened? How many relationships could have been saved if the conversation wasn't a competition? How many regrets would never have existed if we all just took a breath before speaking and asked ourselves, what am I really hearing here? What is this person actually trying to say? That question alone could transform marriages, friendships, teams, and even entire communities. Because beneath most arguments, beneath most misunderstandings, is a cry to be understood, a desperate need for someone to care enough to pause and say, I'm here, I see you, I'm listening. So don't underestimate the power of being the one who listens. In a room full of noise, you'll be the peace. In a world chasing validation, you'll offer presence. In conversations full of ego, you'll bring empathy. And that kind of listening doesn't just make you wise. It makes you magnetic. It makes you trusted. It makes you memorable. Because people forget what you said. They'll forget what you did. But they will never forget how it felt to be fully heard, even if just for a moment. And if you can give someone that, you've given them something priceless. You've given them the space to be human. Listening is more than a skill. It's a gift of patience, of humility, and of love. It's the gift of holding space for someone else's story without inserting your own. And in giving that gift, you'll find something even more powerful in return, perspective. Because sometimes, in hearing someone else's truth, you'll find your own. That is the quiet, unwavering brilliance of wisdom. And that is the kind of listening the world desperately needs. From blame to breakthrough, the wisdom of ownership. One of the most difficult but transformative shifts you will ever make in life is the move from blaming others to owning your response. It's natural to want someone to blame when life hurts. When someone betrays you, disrespects you, or disappoints you, the first instinct is to point outward. They made me feel this way. If they hadn't done that, I wouldn't be like this. That's emotion talking, loud, raw, and reactive. Emotion wants a villain. It wants a reason to justify the pain, a target to unload the anger on. But here's what emotion won't tell you. Blaming others may give you temporary relief, but it steals your long-term power. Because every time you point the finger, you're giving someone else control over your peace. And why would you give the keys to your peace to the very person who hurt you? Wisdom knows better. Wisdom doesn't waste time assigning blame. It looks inward and asks, what part did I play? That question doesn't mean you're taking the blame for everything. It means you're taking responsibility for how you choose to heal, how you choose to move forward, and how you refuse to let pain define you. There's strength in accountability, not shame. Wisdom teaches you that taking responsibility doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. It shows the world that while you may not control what happened, you absolutely control what happens next. And that choice right there, that's the birthplace of growth. That's where the victim becomes a victor. That's where the pain becomes purpose. Think about how often we replay a painful event in our minds, over and over again, like a broken record. Emotion keeps pressing repeat. It wants to relive the wound, rehash the betrayal, and recycle the story until it becomes a part of who we are. But wisdom presses pause. It steps back and says, okay, what can I learn from this? What is this moment trying to teach me? And in doing so, it breaks the cycle. It stops the story from becoming your identity, and instead transforms it into your instruction. You're not stuck because of what happened. You're stuck because of how you're responding to it. Shift your response, and you shift your reality. The truth is, growth begins when blame ends. As long as you're blaming others, you stay in the same emotional place. You wait for them to apologize before you heal. You wait for them to change before you move forward. You wait for them to make it right before you decide to be okay. But what if they never apologize? What if they never admit they were wrong? Will you stay broken forever, waiting for someone else to set you free? Wisdom says, even if they never say, sorry, I can still rise. That's ownership. That's freedom. Because now, your peace no longer depends on someone else's actions. It's rooted in your decision. Owning your response doesn't mean you're emotionless. It means you matured past being ruled by emotion. You still feel the pain, but you don't let it poison your perspective. You still carry the memory, but it no longer carries your identity. And this is where true transformation happens. Not when you change your past, but when you change your position in the present. That shift from reactive to reflective is where wisdom takes over. It asks the hard questions. What did I ignore that I should have paid attention to? What boundary did I fail to set? What belief about myself allowed me to stay in that situation longer than I should have? These aren't questions of shame. They're questions of empowerment, because the answers don't keep you stuck. They launch you forward. The more you embrace responsibility, the less power the past has over you. You stop reliving it and start rewriting it. You move from being someone who suffered to someone who survived, and even further, to someone who grew stronger because of it. You reclaim your story not by denying what happened, but by deciding what happens next. And that decision, that's where healing begins. Because healing isn't just about feeling better. It's about choosing better. Better thoughts, better actions, better people, better standards. And that choice can't happen while you're stuck in blame. It only happens when you take the pen back and say, this is my life, and I'm going to write the next chapter. So if you've been hurt, yes, honor the hurt. Feel it, acknowledge it, but don't stay there. Don't build a home in a place meant only to teach you. Feel the pain, but don't become the pain. Let it pass through you, not root itself in you. And then step up, take ownership of your next move. Take responsibility for your next decision, not because you're to blame, but because you're powerful enough to rise. Wisdom doesn't wait for perfect conditions to move forward. It moves forward with clarity, with grace, with truth. In the end, blame is easy. Anyone can do it. But ownership, that's where courage lives. That's where freedom begins. That's where your life starts to change. Not when the world changes, but when you do. And once you realize that no one can ever take your power again. Calm is a superpower, the silent strength of grounded presence. In a world that thrives on noise, urgency, and constant stimulation, calm is often misunderstood. It's mistaken for indifference, seen as passivity, or labeled as weakness. But nothing could be further from the truth. Calm is not the absence of feeling. It's the mastery of it. It's not that calm people don't feel stress, anger, or fear. It's that they've learned not to be driven by it. They've chosen stillness over scattered energy, clarity over chaos, intention over impulse. And that choice, again and again, is where real power lives. Not in the noise you make, but in the peace you maintain when everything around you is shaking. When emotions run high, whether in conflict, crisis, or confrontation, most people instinctively react. They raise their voices, tighten their fists, and get swept up in the whirlwind of the moment. It's easy to be loud. It's easy to interrupt, to defend, to argue. But calm takes restraint. Calm takes courage. It takes incredible inner strength to stand in the middle of emotional chaos and not let it dictate your actions. To observe instead of react. To choose presence over panic. That is a rare kind of leadership, and it begins within. Calm isn't passive. It's deeply active. It's the decision to pause before you respond. It's the discipline to not internalize every attack, to not let every challenge trigger you, and to not allow the behavior of others to determine the quality of your presence. Think of calm as emotional intelligence in motion. It's knowing that just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to act on it. It's the space between stimulus and response, where wisdom has room to breathe. That space is where your growth happens. That pause, that's power. There's a reason people gravitate toward calm individuals. In the middle of a storm, the person who remains steady becomes the anchor for everyone else. When tempers flare and stress escalates, the one who can stay calm holds the most influence. Why? Because their energy is not adding to the chaos. It's offering contrast. Calm people make others feel safe. They communicate with intention, not tension. Their presence doesn't demand attention, but it commands respect. And in a world that rewards reaction, being a person of reflection stands out. Calm doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you choose your battles wisely. It means you don't waste energy proving yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. It means you know when to speak and when to stay silent, not out of fear, but out of focus. You're not interested in every argument. You're not pulled into every conflict. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise. You understand that your peace is too valuable to gamble in moments of emotional instability. And here's the beauty of calm. It's contagious. When you remain calm in conflict, you disarm aggression. When you speak with clarity instead of volume, people tend to lean in, not push back. Your composure becomes a mirror. You show others what self-control looks like. You set a higher standard without ever raising your voice. That's the quiet leadership of calm. It's not loud, but it's incredibly powerful. Calm also gives you access to something that emotion often clouds: clarity. When your mind is calm, you can see things for what they truly are, not just how they feel. You're able to read the room, sense the truth beneath the words, and respond with insight instead of instinct. You're not just hearing what's being said, you're understanding what's not being said. That's emotional maturity. That's wisdom at work. And it can only emerge when you create space inside yourself. Space not filled with noise or reactivity, but with focus, groundedness, and intentionality. The truth is, most people aren't taught how to be calm. They're taught how to react. They're raised in environments where shouting wins arguments, where anger gets results, and where silence is seen as surrender. But real strength isn't in how loud you are. It's in how centered you are. It's in being so rooted in your identity, your truth, and your values that nothing from the outside can shake what's on the inside. Calm is a reflection of inner security. And when you have that, you don't need to prove yourself with pressure. You lead with presence. So the next time life gets loud, the next time someone tries to bait you into a conflict or a storm comes knocking at your door, don't rush to react. Breathe. Pause. Remind yourself that calm is a choice, a powerful one. The storm may rage around you, but it doesn't have to rage within you. You are not your emotion. You are the awareness behind it. You are the one who gets to choose how to carry your energy. And when you choose calm, you choose clarity. You choose control. You choose peace. Not because it's easy, but because it's powerful. From blame to breakthrough, owning your growth and reclaiming your power. It's human nature to look outward when we're hurt. When something goes wrong, whether it's betrayal, disrespect, failure, or heartbreak, our first instinct is to find a reason, a culprit, a direction for our pain. They did this to me. If only they had treated me better. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't feel like this. These thoughts come fast and furious because emotion needs something to anchor itself to, someone to blame. It's easier to point the finger than to look in the mirror. But here's what emotion doesn't tell you. Blame might feel good in the moment, but it slowly chips away at your power. Because as long as your peace is in someone else's hands, you've handed them control over your healing. Wisdom, however, walks a different path. It doesn't ask, who can I blame? It asks, what can I learn? It doesn't waste time replaying every wrong done. It leans into reflection. It invites growth. Wisdom recognizes that taking responsibility for your response is not about accepting fault for everything that happened. It's about refusing to be trapped by it. It's about stepping into the only thing you can truly control, your next move. That's where transformation begins. That's where blame ends and breakthrough begins. The truth is, most people stay stuck not because they're broken, but because they're blaming. They replay the same story in their minds, retelling the same wounds, reliving the same pain, hoping that one day the past will change or the people who hurt them will suddenly return and make it right. But that day rarely comes. And in waiting for it, they waste the only thing they have for sure, the present. Wisdom whispers, you don't need their apology to heal. You don't need closure to grow. You don't need to stay in the loop of what happened. You get to choose what happens next. When you stop pointing fingers and start taking responsibility, something incredible happens. You unlock your ability to change. You move from victimhood to victory. You no longer rely on someone else to rescue you. You become the rescuer. You become the solution. And that shift, though subtle, is powerful. Because now, instead of waiting for life to be fair, you rise with a mindset that says, I will grow from this. I will get stronger. I will not let what they did define who I become. Emotion holds grudges. Wisdom holds lessons. Emotion screams, they owe me. Wisdom says, I owe it to myself to move forward. And that doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen. It means choosing not to let the pain have the final say. Taking responsibility is not letting them off the hook. It's letting yourself off the hook of resentment, of replaying the past, of waiting for someone else's remorse. It's giving yourself permission to rise, regardless of whether they ever acknowledge what they did. Because healing is not a group project. It's personal. It starts with a decision to stop looking for justice in the past and start building peace in the present. And here's the irony of blame. It feels like power, but it's actually a prison. Every time you say, they made me feel this way, you give them control over your emotions. Every time you say, I can't move on until they make it right, you tie your freedom to someone else's choices. That's not strength, that's dependence. But when you say, this hurt, yes, but I get to choose what I do with it, that's when the tide turns. That's when you start reclaiming your narrative. That's when pain becomes purpose. Responsibility doesn't mean you deserve the harm. It means you deserve the healing. And healing can't happen if you're constantly waiting for someone else to begin it for you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, even if they never apologize, I will still rise. Even if they never understand what they did, I won't let it define me. That mindset is maturity. That's wisdom in motion. It's choosing growth over grievance, direction over distraction, healing over history. You can't rewrite the past, but you can take control of the pen moving forward. You can learn from the pain. You can use the hurt as fuel, the failure as foundation, the betrayal as a boundary. You can stop seeking closure from others and start creating closure within yourself. That's where freedom lives. That's where peace begins, not in what others do or say, but in what you choose to carry and what you choose to let go. So let this be the shift. Move from blame to breakthrough, from pain to purpose, from anger to accountability. Not because it's easy, but because you're worth it. Your future is far too valuable to be held hostage by your past. And the moment you choose to stop blaming and start owning, your healing begins, your strength returns, and your power is fully reclaimed. From blame to breakthrough, owning your growth and reclaiming your power. It's human nature to look outward when we're hurt. When something goes wrong, whether it's betrayal, disrespect, failure, or heartbreak, our first instinct is to find a reason, a culprit, a direction for our pain. They did this to me. If only they had treated me better. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't feel like this. These thoughts come fast and furious because emotion needs something to anchor itself to, someone to blame. It's easier to point the finger than to look in the mirror. But here's what emotion doesn't tell you. Blame might feel good in the moment, but it slowly chips away at your power. Because as long as your peace is in someone else's hands, you've handed them control over your healing. Wisdom, however, walks a different path. It doesn't ask, who can I blame? It asks, what can I learn? It doesn't waste time replaying every wrong done. It leans into reflection. It invites growth. Wisdom recognizes that taking responsibility for your response is not about accepting fault for everything that happened. It's about refusing to be trapped by it. It's about stepping into the only thing you can truly control, your next move. That's where transformation begins. That's where blame ends and breakthrough begins. The truth is, most people stay stuck not because they're broken, but because they're blaming. They replay the same story in their minds, retelling the same wounds, reliving the same pain, hoping that one day the past will change or the people who hurt them will suddenly return and make it right. But that day rarely comes. And in waiting for it, they waste the only thing they have for sure, the present. Wisdom whispers, you don't need their apology to heal. You don't need closure to grow. You don't need to stay in the loop of what happened. You get to choose what happens next. When you stop pointing fingers and start taking responsibility, something incredible happens. You unlock your ability to change. You move from victimhood to victory. You no longer rely on someone else to rescue you. You become the rescuer. You become the solution. And that shift, though subtle, is powerful. Because now, instead of waiting for life to be fair, you rise with a mindset that says, I will grow from this. I will get stronger. I will not let what they did define who I become. Emotion holds grudges. Wisdom holds lessons. Emotion screams, they owe me. Wisdom says, I owe it to myself to move forward. And that doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen. It means choosing not to let the pain have the final say. Taking responsibility is not letting them off the hook. It's letting yourself off the hook of resentment, of replaying the past, of waiting for someone else's remorse. It's giving yourself permission to rise, regardless of whether they ever acknowledge what they did. Because healing is not a group project. It's personal. It starts with a decision to stop looking for justice in the past and start building peace in the present. And here's the irony of blame. It feels like power, but it's actually a prison. Every time you say, they made me feel this way, you give them control over your emotions. Every time you say, I can't move on until they make it right, you tie your freedom to someone else's choices. That's not strength, that's dependence. But when you say, this hurt, yes, but I get to choose what I do with it, that's when the tide turns. That's when you start reclaiming your narrative. That's when pain becomes purpose. Responsibility doesn't mean you deserve the harm. It means you deserve the healing. And healing can't happen if you're constantly waiting for someone else to begin it for you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, even if they never apologize, I will still rise. Even if they never understand what they did, I won't let it define me. That mindset is maturity. That's wisdom in motion. It's choosing growth over grievance, direction over distraction, healing over history. You can't rewrite the past, but you can take control of the pen moving forward. You can learn from the pain. You can use the hurt as fuel, the failure as foundation, the betrayal as a boundary. You can stop seeking closure from others and start creating closure within yourself. That's where freedom lives. That's where peace begins, not in what others do or say, but in what you choose to carry and what you choose to let go. So let this be the shift. Move from blame to breakthrough, from pain to purpose, from anger to accountability. Not because it's easy, but because you're worth it. Your future is far too valuable to be held hostage by your past. And the moment you choose to stop blaming and start owning, your healing begins, your strength returns, and your power is fully reclaimed. Living the wisdom, from reflection to revolution. Learning wisdom is the first step. Living it, that's where the transformation happens. It's easy to be wise in theory. It's easy to nod along with truths that feel good on paper. But the real challenge, the real growth, begins when life tests you, when you're misunderstood, when you're wronged, when you're under pressure, when nothing makes sense and your emotions scream for control. That's where wisdom isn't just remembered, it's revealed. And in that moment, you get to choose. Will I fall back into reaction or will I rise with intention? Living with wisdom means that you no longer let every trigger control your story. You stop giving your energy to things that don't deserve it. You stop fighting battles that have nothing to do with your destiny. You become selective, not because you're arrogant, but because you've learned the value of your peace. You've learned that your attention is currency, your energy is sacred, and your focus is the fuel for your future. And so you choose to protect it, not with force, but with clarity. You start seeing the world differently. Instead of judging others for their reactions, you begin to understand the pain behind their behavior. Instead of rushing to defend your opinion, you find power in listening, in understanding. Not everything needs your voice, and not everything deserves your time. Wisdom teaches you how to discern, not just what's urgent, but what's important. And in that space, you start building a life that's not defined by chaos, but by alignment. Living the wisdom means you don't just seek peace, you create it. You become the person others feel calm around. You become the grounding force in your family, your workplace, your community. Not by trying to fix everyone, but by fixing yourself. By becoming so deeply rooted in who you are, what you believe, and what you value, that no storm can shake you off course. That's not just leadership. That's legacy. Because when people see your composure under pressure, when they feel your calm in the middle of their storm, they won't remember your title. They'll remember your presence. Wisdom isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It's about waking up every day and choosing the higher road, even when it's harder. It's about choosing reflection over reaction, grace over ego, and purpose over pride. It's knowing that there is no strength in proving yourself to everyone, but great strength in remaining true to yourself. And that truth, it's what guides every decision, every boundary, every response. You stop living to be seen, and you start living to be centered. You begin to realize that wisdom isn't a destination. It's a discipline, a daily commitment to stillness in a noisy world, a decision to respond with love when you're met with anger, a practice of pausing, breathing, and asking yourself, is this reaction aligned with who I am or just how I feel? That small moment of self-awareness can change everything. Because when you live with wisdom, you no longer need the world to be calm for you to be at peace. You carry your calm with you. You become the eye of a storm, still, focused, unshaken. And the ripple effect? It's real. Your wisdom becomes contagious. Your silence in chaos becomes a model. Your peace becomes a mirror that shows others what's possible. People don't always follow what you say. They follow who you are. So, when you become someone who walks in wisdom, you give others permission to do the same. That's how families heal. That's how relationships shift. That's how leaders are made, not in noise, but in depth. So, let this be more than a message you consume. Let it be a compass you live by, a code you carry. Wisdom is not something you stumble into. It's something you cultivate through reflection, through restraint, through resolve. Start small. One pause, one choice, one decision to not give into the fire, but to become the water that calms it. And over time, you'll look back and realize this wasn't just about handling life better. It was about becoming someone stronger, someone wiser, someone unshakable. Because in the end, your legacy won't be built on how loud you were, how quickly you reacted, or how many arguments you won. It will be built on how deeply you loved, how wisely you chose, and how calmly you stood when the world around you was falling apart. This is your time. Your call to stillness. Your invitation to rise, not with noise, but with wisdom. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more you, the grounded, focused, wise version of you, the one who's not here to impress the storm, but to outlast it and lead others through it.